In the quiet village of Ubohia, where the River Omiri weaved like a silver serpent through sacred groves, and where the mighty Mount Exile kissed the skies, lived a woman whose name stirred both admiration and wonder, Nkemjika. Her presence lit the village like dawn light filtering through raffia huts. Her eyes were as deep as the whispering lake, and her laughter could soothe even the fiercest warrior. Yet for all her grace and intelligence, she remained unmarried. The villagers whispered theories under the shade of the Ubohia tree, the great baobab where council matters were held. Some said she was cursed. Others believed her destiny was too powerful for ordinary men. But Nkemjika herself remained patient until the ache in her heart could no longer be silenced. One Harmattan morning, she climbed the hill to the oracle's shrine. There, in a small clay hut covered in white chalk symbols and thick with the scent of burning sage, sat Mama Nwati, the blind seer of Ubohia. Her milky eyes stared into nothingness, yet she saw what others could not. "My daughter," Mama Nwati whispered, tracing the shell beads in her lap. "Your womb is no ordinary vessel. The man who fathers your child will lead this village into a golden era. The ancestors have spoken." The words struck Nkemjika like lightning, a divine calling and a terrible burden. "But who is he, Mama?" Nkemjika asked, voice quivering. "That is for fate to reveal," Mama Nwati said cryptically. "Not even I can see what path the ancestors will choose. But one thing is certain, your son will knock on the door of destiny." In the days that followed, Nkemjika wrestled with the weight of the prophecy. The village needed peace. For years, the elders had argued. Young men clashed over land, and omens of drought hung heavy in the air. If her child could usher in a season of abundance, was she not obligated to act? She made a bold decision, one that would shake Ubohia to its roots. If the prophecy depended on the father, then she would ensure that no possibility was left untested. She approached the 6 most eligible bachelors in the village: warriors, farmers, craftsmen, and merchants, and one by one she lay with them in sacred secrecy. The weeks turned into months, and rumors swirled like Harmattan dust. Children whispered, elders frowned, wives clutched their beads tighter. But Nkemjika remained unmoved, anchored by a purpose larger than shame. She bore their scorn with a quiet grace. And then, on a night when the moon sat full and swollen in the sky, Nkemjika gave birth to a son. She named him Obiajulu. The heart has found peace. The child was radiant, his skin glowing under torchlight, his cries soft like wind through palm fronds. The village gathered to behold him, drawn by awe, fear, and the promise of prophecy. But with his arrival came questions too heavy for lullabies. Who was the father? Who would lead Ubohia? And would the truth, when it came, unite or divide? The cries of baby Obiajulu had barely faded into soft coos when Ubohia was consumed by unrest. Beneath the shade of the Ubohia tree, debates erupted like thunder. Each of the 6 men who had lain with Nkemjika claimed the child as his own. Each believed that he, not the others, was destined to lead the village into its foretold golden age. From Chisholm, the ambitious trader who boasted of riches and goats, to Echezona, the iron-fisted warrior whose voice silenced even the wind, they all presented arguments. "Look at his nose," one said. "His hands match mine," claimed another. Wives gossiped at the riverbank. Young girls sang crude songs in the market. Unity frayed like an old wrapper caught on a thorn. To calm the chaos, Elder Ekweme, the oldest and most respected voice in Ubohia, summoned a council of elders. Beneath the sacred baobab, surrounded by drums and incense, the council gathered. Even Mama Nwati, cloaked in white and draped in silence, was summoned. Elder Ekweme rose slowly, leaning on a carved walking stick said to have belonged to his great-grandfather. His voice was deep, weathered by wisdom. "We cannot allow pride and prophecy to become poison. The ancestors do not play dice with destiny. If none of us can tell who the father is, then let the ancestors decide." All eyes turned to Mama Nwati, whose milky gaze lifted to the unseen. "There is a test," she said softly, her words carrying an eerie finality. "A journey to the peak of Mount Exile, where the moonstone of truth lies waiting." The crowd stirred. The moonstone rests upon an altar carved by our forebears. Only the man who is destined, whose spirit aligns with the prophecy, will be able to bring it down from the peak. He will not need strength, but purity of heart and purpose. Let each man go, and let the spirits choose. The declaration fell like a stone into still water, unsettling, inevitable. Elder Ekweme nodded solemnly. 3 days from now, at first light, the 6 men shall journey together. They will bring no weapons, only offerings of kola, palm wine, and the amulets of their forefathers. That night, as the village quieted under a moonless sky, Nkemjika sat by her hearth, watching Ubohia sleep. His tiny hand curled around her finger, like a question yet to be answered. In her heart, she trusted the spirits, but in her bones, she feared what the journey would reveal. Would love guide the path, or would ambition lead them astray? One thing was certain: the mountain would not be kind. The third morning dawned red and solemn. The sky above Ubohia was streaked with streaks of fire, as if the gods themselves were watching. The villagers gathered in reverent silence near the foot of the trail that led to Mount Exile, its jagged outline looming like a sleeping giant over their fate. 6 men stood side by side: Chisholm, Echezona, Ikena, Tochukwu, Azubuike, and Obina. Each wore a red cloth tied at the waist and held a satchel of sacred offerings: kola nuts, cowries, palm wine, and carved charms from their ancestors. Their expressions ranged from determined to doubtful. This was no ordinary journey. It was a test of spirit. Drums beat a slow rhythm as Elder Ekweme raised his hand in blessing. Let your feet be steady and your hearts be true. The ancestors are watching. Among the crowd, Nkemjika held her son close. Ubohia's gaze, still infant soft, seemed to fix on the path ahead. She whispered a silent prayer, not for one man in particular, but for truth, whatever it may be. The climb began. The trail to Mount Exile was no ordinary path. It twisted through dense forests, where trees whispered old secrets, and roots reached out like arms trying to trip the unworthy. Wild animals watched from the shadows. The mountain had its own spirit, ancient and aware. They passed through the caves of memory, where sounds from their past echoed in strange whispers. Chisholm heard his mother's last words. Echezona was haunted by a scream he once ignored. The journey was already proving more spiritual than physical. At the base of the summit, the men arrived at the stone altar of the moonstone. Carved with runes and sacred proverbs, it sat beside a still pool that reflected not the sky, but one's own soul. Suddenly, a voice soft but commanding filled the air. It didn't come from any mouth. It came from the mountain. Offer what you value most. Only the worthy may rise. Each man stepped forward. Chisholm offered gold. The altar remained still. Echezona dropped his father's dagger. Nothing. Ikena laid down a chain of ivory beads. No light stirred. Tochukwu placed down his prized hunting charm. The altar stayed silent. Azubuike, hesitant but honest, placed a carved flute from childhood. Still, the stone did not glow. Then came Obina. Unlike the others, he offered no object. He knelt beside the altar and placed his hand on the stone. May the ancestors guide this village, he whispered, voice breaking. Let not my ambition cloud your will. If I am unworthy, let the stone reject me. If I am chosen, let it be for the good of Ubohia. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, light. A soft glow erupted from the moonstone, growing brighter with each breath. A wind swept over the mountain, cool and full of unseen presence. The path to the summit behind the altar shifted, revealed where it was once hidden. A gasp rose from the others. They had no choice but to follow Obina. Something in his humility had spoken to the spirits, or so it seemed. Together they began the final ascent. But Nkemjika's dream that night was filled with shadows. In it, she saw a golden key shattering in half, and a baby wrapped in white, floating down the river. The mountain had opened its path, but was it the right one? The summit of Mount Exile was like the edge of heaven, wind-whipped and glowing under a moon that hung low and watchful. The 6 men stood in a circle, breathing heavily, hearts pounding not just from the climb, but from what awaited. There, resting on a pedestal of stone, worn smooth by time, lay the moonstone. It was pulsing softly, its glow neither blinding nor dim like a heart beating within the mountain. The air buzzed, charged with something both sacred and strange. Obina, humble and calm, stepped forward. His hands trembled as he touched the moonstone. Suddenly the stone's glow intensified, shooting a beam of light skyward. Then, like gentle rainfall, a cascade of silver light returned and wrapped itself around him. A voice, ancient and clear, echoed in the wind. Obina, son of Maduka, the spirits have found you worthy. You are the father of the child who shall lead Ubohia. The other men bowed their heads not in surrender, but in reverence. Whatever personal hopes they had carried up the mountain had been scattered like leaves. For now the village had an answer, and that answer was Obina. When they returned, the village exploded in jubilation. Drums beat wildly. Women danced with calabashes on their heads. Children smeared their faces with chalk and ran through the market in celebration. At the foot of the Ihu Udo tree, the elders anointed Obina with palm oil and crowned him the heir to Ubohia. Nkemjika, holding Obiajulu, watched it all with mixed emotions. She smiled, but her heart was uneasy. That night, while the village slept in contentment and Obina feasted in the circle of warriors, Nkemjika heard voices behind her hut. Low, urgent, familiar. She tiptoed to the back, pressing her ear against the cool mud wall. The village suspects nothing, came the raspy voice of Mamanwadi, the oracle. The stone responded just as I said it would. Obina's voice followed quieter. But my heart is heavy, Mama. I know I am not the child's father. Do you think leadership is about blood? Mamanwadi snapped. It is about stability. The people needed a name. You gave them one. Let them rest. Let peace hold. Silence. Then Obina whispered, May the gods forgive me. Nkemjika staggered back, her breath caught in her throat. Her world spun. Lies tangled in prophecy, a throne built on deceit. She looked down at Obiajulu, his tiny fist curled in sleep, unaware of the storm around him. Her son was not a tool. The village deserved the truth. But how could she reveal it now? After the celebration? After the blessing of the moonstone? Would she not tear the village in two? Still, she could not stay silent. That night, as the fires died down, she made a choice to seek the truth again, even if it meant walking into darkness. There was only one place to go now. To the Ebubadike forest. To the hermit of truth. The Ebubadike forest was not a place the villagers of Ubohia entered lightly. Legends spoke of ancient spirits that guarded the trees, of voices that mimicked loved ones to lead the lost astray. Only the brave, the foolish, or the desperate ventured in. Nkemjika was all three. With Obiajulu strapped firmly to her back in a pouch of kola nuts, charcoal, and a carved whistle for protection, she stepped past the last farmland into the whispering wild. The trees rose like titans, their roots curling like question marks. The forest had a pulse, a rhythm older than speech. Every step felt like a test. Owls hooted, branches creaked. At one point, a shadow darted past, and Obiajulu stirred with a faint cry. But Nkemjika held firm, her feet guided by an inner compass, the ache for truth. After hours of weaving through undergrowth and trails barely visible, she reached a clearing where light poured like honey from the canopy above. In its center stood a small mud hut, circled by white stones and dried feathers. Before it sat a man with silver dreadlocks that reached the earth and a beard that coiled like vines. His eyes were closed, but he spoke before she could. Nkemjika of Ubohia, the river bends for you tonight. Startled, she fell to her knees. Great one, I seek the truth. The moonstone chose falsely. My son's future rests on a lie. The hermit of Ebubadike opened his eyes slowly. They were pale green, sharp as flint. I know, he said. The mountain listens, but the moonstone can be fooled, if touched with charm and shadow. What you seek is the ritual of cleansing. It has not been performed in 5 generations. Nkemjika nodded, determined. What must I do? The hermit reached into the folds of his robe and pulled out a small calabash filled with blue powder. You must return the moonstone to Lake Ukutu, the Whispering Lake. On the night of the new moon, cleanse it with this dust, recite the words I will teach you, and let the spirits decide free of any human hand. She listened carefully as he whispered the incantation, her lips moving silently in repetition. Obiajulu stirred again as though sensing the importance of the moment. The hermit's gaze softened. You are brave, but be warned, the truth does not always bring peace. It brings change. Nkemjika bowed deeply. She journeyed back under the rising moon, emerging from the forest just before dawn. Her limbs were weary, her mind full, but her heart carried a new fire. She would retrieve the moonstone. She would perform the ritual. She would let the spirits speak without interference. And whatever the truth, she would embrace it. For herself, for her son, for Ubohia. 3 nights later, Ubohia pulsed with celebration. The Feast of the Ancestors had arrived, a time when families honored those who came before them, when spirits were said to walk among the living. Fires lit every compound. Drums echoed into the night. But Nkemjika's heart was not with the dancers. She had done what many thought impossible, quietly retrieved the moonstone from its guarded sanctuary with help from a sympathetic guard, Onwachi, who believed in her mission. It now lay beneath her sleeping mat, wrapped in cloth and secrecy, glowing faintly, as if it too awaited judgment. The new moon had risen, black and blank as the void. It was time. With Obiajulu sound asleep under Mama Udu's care, Nkemjika wrapped herself in a dark shawl and slipped away through the shadows, past the Ihu Udo tree, past the market, past suspicion. She reached the shores of Lake Ukutu, where moonless waters shimmered unnaturally, not from light, but from memory. The wind was still. Even the frogs held their croaks. Nkemjika stepped to the edge and unwrapped the moonstone. Its surface was dulled, tarnished by the false glory it had once radiated. She sprinkled the blue cleansing dust from the hermit into the lake and lowered the stone into the water. Then she spoke the ancient words, spirits of water, spirits of sky, strip away what truth denies. Let this stone speak not with charm, but with the pulse of spirit's arm. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then the water shimmered, the moonstone glowed. A soft hum, like a lullaby from deep beneath the earth, began to rise. A wind swept across the lake, lifting her shawl. Nkemjika fell to her knees, tears in her eyes. The stone had accepted the ritual. The lie had been washed away. She returned to the village at dawn, the cleansed moonstone hidden beneath her wrapper, her resolve like iron. That evening, the village gathered once again beneath the baobab tree. She stepped forward before the people, holding the stone high. This moonstone has been touched by deceit and now made clean by spirit, she declared. Let each man who believes he fathered Obiajulu step forward and hold it. If it glows, he is the one. If not, let us never speak of doubt again. A ripple passed through the crowd. The elders, surprised but curious, gave their reluctant blessing. One by one, the 6 men stepped forward. Chizom, Echizona, Ikena, Tochukwu, Azubuke. Nothing. Then came Obina. He held it with trembling hands. For a moment, the stone flickered, then dimmed. Silence fell. Gasps. Confusion. Before anyone could speak, a voice rang out from the back of the crowd. The stone speaks not only to hands, but to eyes. Let Nkemjika look upon it. It was Mama Udu, voice firm with ancestral weight. Nkemjika turned. Her eyes met Obina's, then dropped to the stone. The moonstone flashed violently, then went black. The crowd gasped. Obina's face turned pale. Nkemjika stood tall. Obina is not the father! A storm of voices erupted, some angry, some in awe. Then, laughter, cruel, unraveling. Mama Nwadi stepped forward, clapping slowly, her blind eyes glowing with something more than madness. Even the best laid lies burn when the spirits breathe. So be it. Chaos loomed, but Nkemjika raised the moonstone high once more, its dim core still warm with power. We will not end in confusion. Let the River Omiri speak next. Let the village come. Let the spirits speak once and for all. And the crowd, moved by something greater than rage or doubt, nodded. Tomorrow they would go to the river, and the river would answer. The morning sun rose pale over Ubohia, its light veiled by low clouds as though the heavens themselves held their breath. Word had spread like wildfire. The truth would be revealed at the River Omiri. No one tended to farms. No one opened market stalls. Every soul from suckling babe to hunched elder gathered by the riverbanks, waiting for justice. The River Omiri glistened under the morning light, wide and calm, but its history was anything but gentle. It was said to remember every oath, every broken promise, every lie whispered beneath the moon. And when called upon, it answered without bias, without mercy. Elder Ekwemi, flanked by 2 drummers and 4 other elders, stepped forward. He held a staff carved from the root of the baobab, his face carved from years of sorrow and wisdom. Today, he said, the ancestors will speak through the river. Let each man who once claimed paternity of Obiajulu come forth. One by one, place your hand in the water. Speak your truth. If you are the father, the river will turn gold. If you lie, it will remain dark, or worse. Tension hummed like a string stretched to breaking. Chisholm went first. He dipped his hand into the cool water and said, Obiajulu is my blood. I swear by my father's grave. Nothing. Echezona, Ikena, Tochukwu, Azubuke. One by one, they repeated the ritual. Each time, still waters. Silent judgment. Then came Obinna. He walked slowly, eyes lowered. Nkemjika watched him, not with anger, but with a tired sorrow. Obinna knelt at the river's edge and placed his hand into the current. I wronged this village, he said, but I swear before the gods and my ancestors, I believed my lie would bring peace. The river rippled gently, but no change came. The people murmured. Finally, from the rear of the crowd, a man stepped forward, hesitant, trembling. Dyke, the quiet hunter, the man no one suspected. He knelt. No grand speech, no flourish. Just the truth. I am Dyke, son of Obadika. I loved Nkemjika in silence, once in truth. I do not seek power, but I will not hide from what is mine. He placed his hand in the water. At first stillness, then a sudden shimmer. The river began to glow gold, starting at Dyke's fingers and spreading like dawn through the current. A hush fell over the crowd. Birds took flight. Even the wind paused. The River Omiri had spoken. Elder Ekwemi raised his staff. Dyke, son of Obadike, you are the true father of Obiajulu, as declared by water and spirit. May we never again question what the ancestors reveal. Gasp gave way to silence. Then silence gave way to awe. Nkemjika stood, tears trailing her cheeks as she stepped toward Dyke. Their eyes met not with romance, but with a recognition deeper than words. In that moment, Obiajulu stirred in Mama Udu's arms, and the wind picked up gently, as though affirming the bond that had finally been made visible. Mama Nwadi, once untouchable, stood stone-faced. She began to walk away, but not before Elder Ekwemi turned. And for those who clouded the truth, let justice be done. A decision loomed. A reckoning was near. But for now, the village had what it needed. Truth. The village of Ubohia stood suspended in time. The golden glow of the River Omiri still shimmered, as if reluctant to fade, holding the moment like a sacred memory. Around its banks, the villagers stood in silence, not out of fear but reverence. They had witnessed truth, not from mouths that twist, but from water that remembers. Elder Ekwemi called for an emergency gathering beneath the Ihuudo tree. The villagers followed without complaint. There was justice to be served, wounds to be cleaned, healing to begin. Mama Nwadi stood before the elders. No longer the untouchable oracle, she was just a woman draped in white, but stripped of authority. She did not resist. "I believed I was protecting the prophecy," she said, voice trembling like dried leaves. "I thought if Obina ruled, we would have peace." Elder Ekweme's eyes held no hatred, only sadness. Peace built on a lie is a house on sand. He turned to Obina, who knelt without being asked. "I never deserved the crown," Obina said. "I will accept whatever punishment is fitting." The council deliberated, then delivered its verdict. Mama Nwadi would be removed as oracle. Her sacred hut returned to the earth. The new seer would be chosen not by inheritance, but through divine consultation in the months to come. Obina would be stripped of his title and privileges, but allowed to remain in Ubohia under the condition that he served the community for one full season, rebuilding the footpath to Mount Exile and clearing the village waterway. Their punishments were not fueled by vengeance, but by the need for restoration. And so the healing began. In the weeks that followed, Ubohia began to change. Obiajulu, once a child of controversy, was now seen as a symbol of clarity and rebirth. Dyke, once quiet and unseen, walked with quiet pride, often found beside Nkemjika, not as her conqueror, but her partner in truth. The village, once divided by suspicion, now found unity in shared humility. The elders revised ancient customs, declaring that no prophecy would ever outweigh the pursuit of truth again. And though Mama Nwadi was no longer oracle, she remained in the village, tending herbs and offering guidance to those who still came to her in silence. Her fall had not ended her wisdom, only her power. One morning, just as the rainy season began, Nkemjika stood at the river with Obiajulu in her arms. She whispered, "Your name means the heart has found peace. And today, mine finally has." Dyke stepped beside her, brushing a loose strand from her face. "We did not choose the prophecy," he said, "but we chose the truth." Above them, the clouds parted. The sun broke through. Children laughed. Drums echoed once more. And the river, the ever-watching river, flowed on, whispering to the trees and to the wind, "Truth may sleep, but it never dies."